The music feels like it's filled to the brim with positive virtues such as encouragement, bravery, heroism, and determination. Hey everyone, my name is Christoph Jakob. I'm a music composer for video games. Today, let's look at another song by Deep Cut from Splatoon 3. This particular song is called Smeared Canvas, also used to be known as The Spirit Lifter, a pretty cool fan name if you ask me, before the official name was revealed. I actually found two different versions with only some really minor and subtle differences. So yeah, let's take a listen. Nice intro. Oh, wow, now the mood changes entirely. The intro to Smeared Canvas starts in a pretty typical deep cut manner. It is quite long for an intro, yet at the same time barely even feels like a classical intro, since it's so upbeat and full of energy overall. The drums are made up of a thick kick drum, an electronic snare drum that comes in the second half of the intro, and some hi-hat shizzle dizzle for some high end. In the first half of the intro, there's also a constant clap sample, similar to how you know it from live bands and concerts, when they want the audience to clap and sing and jump along. Meanwhile, the music is sitting statically on a B minor chord, with a melodic run up and down a so-called pentatonic scale. Simply put, a pentatonic scale, as the name already implies, consists of just 5 different notes. Major and minor scales consist of 7 different notes though. So what's the point, you may ask? You get a B minor pentatonic scale, or just any sort of pentatonic scale, by leaving out the 2nd and the 6th degree of a scale, which leaves us with 5 notes. The main purpose of a pentatonic scale is, regardless of which chords of the key B minor are being played, you can always play those 5 notes and they will never sound wrong. Calamary incantation also works so well in all the different contexts that we've heard so far, because it too has just the notes of a pentatonic scale, making it quite versatile and more usable in different contexts. This motif also sounds really amazing if you play it on a flute. This is still a work in progress, and I allowed myself to improvise a little here and there. The second half of the intro feels quite floaty and meditative to me. It almost feels like a soundscape more than anything, meaning that it's hard to figure out what exactly is going on in there. Let's actually listen to it again. Nice intro. Oh, wow, now the mood changes entirely. I think there are subtle chord changes here and there, but due to the lack of information the tune is giving us, it's not easy for me to figure them out. So I tried to come up with something that sounds somewhat similar and good to my ears. Like I said, the changes are probably just implied, given how subtle they are. Certainly a very interesting way to build up to the first main section of the song. Let's continue. And the tempo changes. What a nice chord progression. Also, that was a nice chord. What a shift in tone. I was just talking about how contemplative the music sounded to me, especially the second half. Once the first main part kicks in, it's instantly starting to sound epic, emotional, and final to my ears. Like the final area or maybe even the final fight of the game. I do know where this tune plays. The vibes I'm getting from this chord progression that I'm gonna talk about in a moment scream finality, decisiveness. The music feels like it's filled to the brim with positive virtues such as encouragement, bravery, heroism, and determination. I'd say there are three main reasons why the music evokes these feelings in us. One, the overall drive of the music. The tempo is quite fast-paced. The drums are a solid foundation keeping the music on track, while the chords change almost every single second. Two, the simplicity. Neither the drum groove nor the chords themselves sound particularly surprising or unusual. The time signature is very straightforward too, it's just 4/4, making the tune quite easy to hum and follow along. And three, the specific choice of the chords. As I've mentioned in multiple videos by now, the so-called flat 6 chord in Roman numerals in a minor key just tends to evoke these sorts of feelings. Especially if it's followed by a flat 7 and a 1 chord, which is the case here. It's honestly one of the most overused chord progressions out there. So whether we're aware of it or not, it's completely ingrained into our brains at this point. And I think the main reason why it's so overused is because it just sounds so good and it works. In my video about the final boss theme from Sonic Frontiers, I talked in detail about this very chord progression, as the entire final boss theme, which is around 3 minutes long I think, is based on nothing but this very chord progression. And like I said, we find the same chord progression in Smeared Canvas as well. I also love how the phrase ends on a so-called sus4 chord. Chords that by nature feel like they want to go somewhere. Not really for the sake of sounding complete. I've made a video where I talked about diminished chords once. They tend to sound a little weird without any sort of context whatsoever as well. Sus4 chords though sound more like they want to prepare you for the upcoming tense chord. Simply put, they basically make this upcoming tense chord feel less tense. Sometimes they also show that the current part is just not really over yet. There's more to come. And guess what's happening in Smeared Canvas? And the tempo changes. The entire section repeats, but this time it does not end on a sus4 chord, but instead on our 1 chord, the most resolved chord in a key. This time telling the listener, on a subconscious level, that the current part is over now. I think this tune could have been much more amazing if the composers had used train whistles more. The same part again. It's slightly different. But I think the chords are the same. The part we just heard doesn't really introduce anything new to us. It's like a combination of the previous section, it seems to be using the same chords too, as well as a rhythm section very similar to what we heard in the intro. You know, what sounds like performers starting to clap, wanting the audience to clap along. One little detail I'd like to point out in this section is the bass though. It's subtle and probably doesn't really mean anything, but I just really liked it when I heard it. At one part, the bass was pretty much imitating the vocalists. And by that I mean the bass was playing the very same notes at the very same time. Take another listen and try to pay attention to what the bass is doing. The part right afterwards is pretty much a repetition or reprise of the first main section. I assume that it's to make sure that this part, this melody, this entire progression really gets ingrained into our brains. Ui. What are those chords? Interesting chord changes. That was certainly a very unusual way to loop a tune back to its beginning. The final section seems to start on a C chord, a chord that's technically not even part of a B minor scale. But out-of-key chords are often what makes music so interesting to listen to in the first place. This chord also doesn't really feel out of place, since the first main section has already briefly teased this chord. Also, that was a nice chord. The chord progression seems to just descend in half steps from C something, could be a C9 chord or a C7 chord, or maybe even something like a C13 chord, all the way down to the equivalent in A. The last step is the bass jumping up from A to D and stepwise moving downwards again until it reaches the note that's right above B. You know, the note that this entire tune started on. And then it loops. Smeared Canvas is quite an overlooked tune if you ask me. I am guilty of not fondly remembering this tune myself though. It's quite a shame you only get to hear it once, especially given how good it is. But who knows, if we were to hear it more often, it might just lose what makes it feel so special to begin with. Aua! Good job, composers. Thanks for watching. For more videos like this, you can click here. For my own little Splatoon-inspired album, you can click here. And for my Splatoon remixes and arrangements, you can click here. See you next time.